dragged by a rope and pelted with dung. Emperor Vitellius found himself hunted in his own palace. Now, the rival general Vespasian's army had breached the city gates. Vitellius panicked. He disguised himself in dirty clothes and tried to hide in a porter's lodge, barricading the door with a dog and a heavy bed. The soldiers broke through easily. They did not recognize him at first. When they realized they had the emperor, the humiliation began. They stripped him half naked. They tied a halter around his neck. They dragged him from the palace and into the Roman forum. A soldier held a sword under his chin, forcing him to keep his head up. He could not hide his face from the people he had brutalized. The mob threw animal waste and garbage at him. They mocked his physical appearance and his past failures. He was dragged to the Gemonian stairs, the exact spot where thousands had died on imperial orders. There, the soldiers game-overed him with countless small cuts. His final words were, "Yet I was once your emperor." The crowd did not care. They took meat hooks, dragged his mutilated body through the streets, and threw it into the Tiber River. The empire's most powerful man, washed away with the city's sewage, a definitive act of damnatio memoria. But Vitellius's gruesome end was only a preview. Up next, two rulers who despised each other would find an even more contemptible, side-by-side demise in the very heart of Rome. Stripped naked and dragged through the streets. On July 29, 238 AD, two Roman emperors died side by side in total disgrace. Pupienus and Balbinus had been chosen by the Senate to rule together. They despised each other. Their mutual paranoia blinded them to the real threat. The Praetorian Guard resented taking orders from senatorial appointees. That afternoon, the guards stormed the imperial palace. The emperors were in separate rooms, arguing over who should call their personal bodyguards. They waited too long. The Praetorians breached the doors. They did not just game over the emperors in the palace, they wanted a public spectacle. The soldiers stripped both men completely naked. They dragged the elderly rulers out of the palace and into the streets of Rome. They pulled them toward the Praetorian camp, beating them with the flat of their swords. Citizens watched as the two highest officials in the Roman world were treated like common thieves. Word reached the soldiers that a loyalist militia was coming to rescue the emperors. The Praetorians did not want to lose their prizes. They stopped in the middle of the street. They game-overed both men where they stood. They left the naked, beaten bodies bleeding on the cobblestones. A 99-day reign ended in the dirt. 6 years in darkness, then strangled for a crowd. In September 46 BC, a man who had commanded 80,000 warriors was paraded through Rome in chains. Vercingetorix was the Gallic king who nearly defeated Julius Caesar. He had surrendered at Alesia in 52 BC to save his people. Caesar did not grant him a swift warrior's death. Instead, he locked Vercingetorix in the Tullianum, a lightless, suffocating underground dungeon in Rome. For 6 years, the Gallic king sat in darkness. Finally, Caesar returned to celebrate his massive triumph. Vercingetorix was brought up from the underground cell. He was blinded by the light, malnourished, and broken. The Romans dressed him in his old armor and forced him to march behind Caesar's chariot. Citizens cheered at the spectacle of the defeated barbarian. The parade ended at the Temple of Jupiter. While Caesar offered sacrifices, Vercingetorix was taken back to his dark cell. There was no public execution to give him final dignity. A Roman executioner slipped a cord around his neck and strangled him in the dark. The man who united Gaul was discarded like a stage prop, kept alive only to serve as a brief highlight in Caesar's victory party. Left bleeding in the dirt while her husband ate dinner. In 48 AD, Empress Valeria Messalina was the most powerful woman in the world. She was the 28-year-old wife of Emperor Claudius. She possessed massive wealth and absolute influence over the throne. Her downfall came through pure arrogance. While Claudius was away, she publicly married her lover, a Roman senator, in a lavish ceremony. Claudius was informed, but hesitated to act against the woman he loved. His advisors did not wait. They dispatched the Praetorian Guard. Messalina fled to the gardens of Lucullus, a sprawling estate she had seized from a rival by forcing him to end his own life. The guards found her trembling in the dirt, abandoned by everyone. Her mother sat beside her, handing her a dagger. Messalina placed the blade against her chest, but she lacked the nerve to push it in. She wept uncontrollably. A Praetorian tribune looked down at her with disgust. He drew his sword and drove it through her chest. She died in the very gardens she had murdered to obtain. When soldiers informed Claudius that his wife had been game-overed, he was sitting at dinner. He did not ask for details. He did not ask to see the body. He simply asked his servants to pour him more wine. The Empress of Rome was forgotten before the meal was finished.